New details just in about the deadly mid-air collision in Washington, D.C. The D.C. fire chief saying this is now a recovery mission. None of the 67 people on the two aircraft survived. So far, at least 28 bodies have been pulled from the Potomac River. An American Airlines jet and a military helicopter collided, despite what authorities are calling a clear night. The jet fuselage found upside down in 3 separate pieces in the river. Witnesses just told us they were alerted by the horrific sound of the crash.
I was in my living room when I heard 2 bang bang around 8:50 p.m. It was loud, it was unusual, it was something you only hear on video games, on movies, something I have never experienced. That's what I caught my attention, and I started looking at the window right there, and immediately I saw the smoke on the south side of the runway.
All right, joining us now, Joshua Schirard, a commercial airline pilot. You have flown into Reagan National many times, and I know you still continue to fly. I want to get your sense from a pilot's perspective. When you are looking at this, we have heard that the helicopter was able to see the aircraft. We do not yet know whether the aircraft was able to see that Black Hawk flying towards it. What can you see on approach in an aircraft of this size?
So it really kind of depends on how that military aircraft is broadcasting. So most commercial traffic and most private aircraft traffic in the U.S. uses a system called ADS-B, Automatic Dependent Surveillance Broadcasting, which has been required by the FAA since 2020. And it communicates with all the other aircraft in the area, letting us know exactly where that aircraft is so that we can see it on our avionics, even though we can't actually see it outside of the cockpit. This system is heavily relied on, especially in these congested areas like that you'll find around DC. So obviously the pilots are going to be watching this very, very closely to make sure that they're staying away from other aircraft. While they were flying visually at night, it is very difficult to see amongst the other lights, other aircraft lights, especially with helicopters, just because they don't move like certain other aircraft. So it may have been very difficult for them to visually see this helicopter. Now, military traffic also are not required to broadcast ADS-B, but they do broadcast in mode S. So the big question here is, were they broadcasting that ADS-B data, and were the pilots able to see that on their avionics?
Yeah, I do want to ask you about, you talked about some of the other things on the aircraft, like the automatic crash avoidance system on passenger jets. But we're told that that system actually shuts down at 1,000 feet. Why is that, and what can it do when it is operating?
So what you're referring to is the TCAS, which is the Traffic Collision Avoidance System. And it does just that. Like you said, it helps us make sure that, and avoid collisions. The part that shuts down 1,000 or 900 or 1,100 feet, depending on how the avionics are set up, is the RA portion, which provides us with resolution advisory. So it will, if we get close to an aircraft, it'll tell us traffic, and tell us where that traffic is. If we get too close to an aircraft, that RA provides us with an escape maneuver. So it'll tell us, pull up, or go to, or push down. So to give us a way to escape from that other aircraft. It's also talking to that other aircraft, and that other aircraft's TCAS system is giving it complementary resolution advisories, escape maneuvers, so that we can avoid. That part shuts down below 1,000-ish feet on approach, because a lot of times you are very close to other aircraft, and it doesn't want to give you an escape maneuver that could put you into an obstacle or into the ground. So it's very likely that as long as the TCAS system could see that helicopter, as long as it was broadcasting correctly, it was probably giving them some sort of warning, but no resolution advisory and no action to take.
And this mid-air crash, one of the rarest, very, very unusual, but we now know that all those that were involved have been lost, and lots of questions remain as to how this happened and to stop it from happening ever again. Joshua Schirard, our commercial pilot here, describing some of the details that you know from your perspective. We appreciate it. He's joining us now, though, is CNN military analyst and retired U.S. Air Force Colonel Cedric Leighton. Also with us, CNN aviation analyst Miles O'Brien. Miles, great to see you as well as you, Cedric. I know, Cedric, you just left the scene earlier today. I want to start, though, with Miles. Miles, what are the things that had to go wrong? What are the things that had to break down when you see this mid-air collision, which is extremely rare?
Yes, it is, Sarah. But when you consider all the factors that go into it, you might wonder why we don't have more of a problem. This is incredibly constrained, constricted, restricted, prohibited airspace and extremely busy. The helicopters fly in a low virtual canyon, basically along the Potomac River, up and down the river. They, on a good day, on their corridor, this Route 4, which goes right underneath that flight path, would have about 300 feet of separation from an aircraft approaching to land at Reagan National Airport. Now, that's not a lot of separation on a good, sunny, clear day, but at night, when it's difficult to spot other aircraft, when you're in a sea of lights from the city, a crew could easily mistake a light on the ground or another aircraft for the target they're being warned to avoid. So there's a lot of factors here involving night visual flight rules in close proximity to airliners on instrument flight rules. Everybody has to really stay on their toes to stay out of each other's collision courses. So as we look at this, there may be some significant rethinks about the procedures along that Potomac corridor.
And Colonel, the combination here of a military aircraft and a commercial aircraft, the fact that this was a military helicopter that collided with this commercial jet, does that make communications between the aircraft and air traffic control, does that add an extra element of complexity to this as we're trying to figure out exactly what Miles is talking about, what went wrong?
Yeah, absolutely, Kate. One of the things to think about is that military aircraft usually use the UHF frequency band, the ultra high frequency band, whereas commercial use VHF. So that means that they are on different frequencies. But the responsibility then is, of course, for the military pilots to contact the civilian air traffic controller. And in this case, we know that they did that. We know that there was contact between the civilian air traffic controller at Reagan National and the helicopter. So there are a lot of things that are unknown about this, but that is one of the complicating factors that could potentially have something to do with this crash.
Miles, the new Secretary of Transportation, Sean Duffy, said that the American Airlines flight was in a standard flight pattern and the military helicopter was in a standard flight pattern. Obviously, unspoken there is that they can't be both in the standard flight pattern at the exact same time in the exact same place. Now, air traffic control, is it their job to keep them separate, and how? And what is the responsibility of the helicopter in this case? Because Sean Duffy also said, the secretary said, that the helicopter was aware of the plane in the area, but he would not go so far as to say that the plane was aware of the helicopter.
Really good question here. This is right at the root of the problem here. And this is a nuanced response, because if you look at the map horizontally, God's eye view, they were both where they should be. One was on the approach path for runway 33. The other was on this Route 4, helicopter Route 4, which flies down the Potomac. It's very important that the helicopters fly at about 200 feet in order to be beneath the traffic going into Washington National Airport. Now, that aircraft at that point would have been at about 500 feet. So on a good day, that's 300 feet. That's not a lot of leeway. So is it possible with the air traffic controller who was communicating with this crew said, avoid this CRJ on approach. Could they have mistaken some other aircraft? There were other aircraft flying in the vicinity, or for that matter, not seen it through the city lights. It can be very difficult at night in an environment like that to pick out traffic amid all the lights which are in the city. So it's quite possible they thought they saw the traffic they were supposed to avoid, were focused on avoiding the wrong traffic, and in so doing, flew in to the American Airlines flight tragically.